the concepts are not that intellectually we don't know. Most of us are intellectually, we are aware of it, but it never strikes us. It doesn't come to the foreground, in the forefront. So with the result that we continue to think as we do without this intellectual knowledge. None of us has experienced the truth really. That's why we are here. But those who, but even intellectually, though we know, some of us may know what the truth is intellectually, yet it doesn't strike us. On the other hand, in order to understand the Mahabharata, Gita, or any of our scriptures, if intellectually it is, we are able to understand what is it, then the other things, the interpretation, etc., readily falls into place, and we are able to understand it. Therefore, I think that I will dwell a little bit on the main left in the lurch by Bhishma. She then, because she was not accepted by anybody, she was so upset that she immolated herself and swore to come back again to take revenge. Again, that was the point that where I stopped the story. But the metaphors I had I had covered only up to the point where uh, Shantanu grants his son, bestows on his son the boon of death at will. Now, death at will and who am I? They are two core concepts. So what I'll do is I'll take this little bit. I won't spend much time because in the last episode I dwelled upon it considerably. This time I'll dwell only for a short while, and then come down to the main story and get the again the metaphors and interpret this portion. So coming to the core concept of who am I had said that there are three entities. We are all of us, male and female, all of us are three in one. The first one is Purush. One of the three entities is Purush. Purush is the all-powerful, ever-existing, immortal, and the source of all power and the source of all power. And it is ever existing. The second one was Prakriti, that also is ever existing, but by itself it doesn't have any power. In order to be able to do something, but it has only the potential. Now, by itself it cannot do anything. However, when it is connected to that source of power, then it can do anything. Now, the Purush is all powerful, has infinite power. So when it is connected to the Purush, to Prakriti, then together they can do whatever they want, because that becomes the source of power is there, infinite source of power. There was, however, a third factor, a third entity, which is called the ego. This ego is the limiting one which limits everything. The ego resides in our mind. The Purush, on the other hand, resides in our heart. The body operates through the commands of the mind. And if the Purush wants to say something or wants to get something done, it has to tell the mind, and the mind then will carry that out. However, when the ego dwells in the mind, then the sound of the ego completely drowns out the the suggestions or the directions of the soul or the Atma, which is there residing inside the body, and it drowns it and overrides it, really speaking. So all actions that are being performed at the level of the ego. Now, that is why we are unable to appreciate the existence of our true self. Our true self is the Purush, which is there, which resides in our heart. The ego, which is the false self, this is what gives us our identity. And whenever if suppose we have to ask, who am I? It is, you get the response from the ego. No, I am so and so. I'm the one who is everything. That is the false ego, which keeps on responding. And it'll say, if you ask even the computers also, the computers too will say the same thing. This is the mind, this is how it is responsible. That builds out character, etc. Now, this point we have to bear it, keep it at the back of our mind. Once we keep this at the back of our mind, then we'll be immediately able to correlate what is happening, why it is so. Because really speaking, everything, whatever is happening in Mahabharata is happening inside us. That is important. The second one was death at will. Now, death at will. Now, normally we assume that what is death when the soul parts from the uh, body, then we term it as death. Well, that is one kind of death, but it's not the real death. And the, when the boon was granted, death at will, it does not mean that the boon was you live as long as you live to the Devrat. The boon was the choose whenever you wish to die. Now, choose whenever you wish to die is no big deal. You can cut your throat right now and you'll be dead. So that was not the real boon. Boon was something else. Now, the real boon comes in when we realize that at the moment of death, what we conventionally call death, the the soul parts company of the prakriti or the body and leaves it. Whereas on one hand, the souls, the body starts deteriorating, disintegrating immediately. There is the soul which is there, which sort of piggyback rights upon the soul. The ego which is there, which piggyback rights upon the ego, on the soul, and forces the soul to enter into another body. Now the soul is therefore is thus bound by the, in a way, hijacked and bound by the ego. And this continues, this binding continues from one birth to another birth, one birth to another birth. So all our scriptures have to deal with this, how to get rid of this, how to, and eventually, if somehow we are able to get rid of the ego, then the soul becomes free. It is not, it is nobody's, nothing is there to force it back into uh, another body. That is the real freedom, and that is the real death. But the death is of the ego, not of the body. Not a Purush, of course, cannot die. Even the Prakriti does not die. So that is the real death. Real death is when the ego is killed. How to do that? The easiest method, and the almost invariably it is done, is through the grace of the Guru. Now, or through the scriptures. And the entire Mahabharata, the Gita and everything, these and all our scriptures, your Veds, etc., they are they deal only with this, how to get rid of the ego. Coming to the story now, the story we had said that uh, we had stopped at Shantanu grants that boon of death at will. Once that boon was granted, then of course the next story which commenced was that of Ambalika, and this, the um, the three queens which were there. Sorry, Amba was captured and she emulates herself, but there were these two queens were there, and they wed the king Vichitraveer. I'm continuing with the story now. These two queens which wed the king Vichitraveer, and for some time the entire country remained peaceful, because you had Bhishma there, a very powerful person who could not be defeated by anybody. But after some time, unfortunately, Vichitraveer died. When he died, then it was a kind of a strange situation where you had two queens. You had a queen mother, two queens, Ambika and Ambalika, and a queen mother, Satyavati, and you had a regent, Bhishma. But you had no king, and you did not have any heir either. So Satyavati, concerned about the kingdom, called Bhishma and told him that you better marry the two queens. Bhishma said, no, no, mother, you know, I've taken a vow of celibacy, a brahmachari, not celibacy. He said, I've taken a vow of brahmacharya, a brahmachari. I am a brahmachari and I've vowed to remain as such. So I'm sorry I can't marry the two princes, or the two queens now, no longer princes, two queens. Then she said, maybe she felt, Satyavati felt that perhaps he's bothered about the righteousness. Now this Bhishma, he was the most knowledgeable person in the entire world that time, and he knew what was right and wrong. And he was a very righteous person. He would not deliberately do anything wrong. But because of his, but nevertheless, in spite of his knowledge and his power, because he was deluded. He was, as his name was Devrat. He used to fast. He used to not believe in God. He didn't accept God. So he was deluded. He was he would his concepts were not very clear, and this delusion will take effect when it comes to certain critical portion, certain critical issues. One of them was that when he had kidnapped them, first of all, he shouldn't have captured and kidnapped these three princesses. But having kidnapped them and brought them to Hastinapur, when Amba's plight was there, that she was disowned by Shalvaraj, she was disowned by uh, Vichitruir. She even Bhishma was not willing to accept her. Now, at that juncture, Bhishma Pitama, he really forgot that, or rather, he could not decide which is more important. Is keeping a vow is more important, or Amba, or the plight of Amba is more important. Had he applied even normal being, we would have said no. We throw your vow. That's not important. The plight of Amba is important. But he could not decide that, and this thing will happen subsequently. Also, we'll see when Draupadi is an attempt is being made to disrobe Draupadi. It will come later. There also, and critical portion. This is what happens when a person is deluded. He may be he is very knowledgeable. He is very powerful, but he is not wise. Wisdom he does not have, in spite of his knowledge. So that's why he keeps on creating this kind of problem. Now the metaphors in this were three. One was Amba, Ambalika, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. Now these Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika are merely forms. Shaluraj. Shal stands for austerity, and Shaluraj, the king of austerity, he represents the mm, the soul. Those the three princesses at that time, or the queens, Amba, Ambalika, and Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika, they represent this uh, form. Bhishma, he represents the soul, and no, he doesn't represent the soul. Sorry, he represents the ego because of his exceeding knowledge and power and his delusion. He didn't believe. He didn't accept God, so he was completely deluded, and he had a lot of ego. This ego is the one that captures the three princesses and brings them back to Hastinapur. Before that, on the way, he is challenged by Shalvaraj. Shalvaraj stands for the soul. That soul challenges the ego and tells him that what you're doing is not right. Nevertheless, the soul, the ego, he drowns it. He defeats Bhishma. He defeats Shalvaraj. What it means is the the ego overpowers, not really overpowers, but it drowns the soul and does not bother about him. That is the significance in this case. When they come back uh, to Hastinapur, there Amba immolates herself and swears that I am going to be reborn again, and the next time I'll be reborn as a man, so that I can challenge you and take my revenge. Unfortunately for her, even though she immolates herself, she's born only as Shikhandi. Now that Shikhandi is a woman, she's born as a girl or a female to a king called Drupad. So we have two more two more names, or rather two more characters to be who are also metaphors. Drupad, where this Shikhandi was born, or Amba, the previous birth was born as Shikhandi. Drupad is really the one who is convinced that there's nothing else other than the body. This is Drupad. Shikhandi is you would have seen these wandering ascetic who with long hair, they have a sort of a knot on their head. That knot is called Shikhandi. So all those ascetic, when they set out on the spiritual journey, they leave their homes and go to the mountains, etc. That time they are no longer, they are not enlightened. They are still searching for the truth. But these people, they are not bothered about their physical looks. They just take a knot, they tie all their hair on the on the head. Sometime they will come across a guru, or they will search out a guru, go to a khada or somewhere, and it is by the grace of the guru that they get enlightened. Once they get enlightened, then of course they know the truth. This is the significance of all those little episodes between Bhishma and Amba. When she becomes Shikhandi, when Amba is reborn as Shikhandi, she is still in the form of female form, a woman. So she prays to the Shikhandi, performs penances, etc., and prays to Lord Shiva. That praise to Lord Shiva means that the individual, see, all these characters are within us. So that character which is within us, looks out for a guru. That guru is also within you, looks out for a guru. And then that guru, that or Lord Shiva, by its grace, changes it into from woman to a man. She was unenlightened first, but after the grace of the Lord Shiva, that becomes enlightened. That is the significance of this. Now, as an enlightened person, will be able to take care or control or straighten out the delusion. One who is deluded will be able to, his delusion can be destroyed by only one who is enlightened. That is how Shikhandi will be able to destroy Bhishma. Later on, we shall see that. Now, this is as far as the story is concerned up to that point, including the metaphor. Now, I'll continue from here in the next part of the story. Now, when Amba and Ambalika, they, by this time, as I told you, that the kingdom functioned under the guidance or rule of the Bhishma Pitama as the regent, and later on as the advisor, and under the king, when Vichitraveer was the king. So when the Vichitraveer, under his rule, things were quite okay, and they continued for some time until this fellow, poor chap, died. This Vichitraveer, he died. Now, there are two queens, widows. There was only one queen mother. There was a regent, but no king, and there was no heir. So Sativity, the queen mother, tells Bhishma that you get married to these two queens because the country needs an heir. So she says no. Bhishma says no, sorry, I can't do that. I've taken a vow of brahmacharya. She thought maybe he's wanting to be righteous. So tells him that look, as per scripture, it is perfectly, in dire circumstances, it is perfectly justified for the elder brother to impregnate the wife of his younger brother. And certainly, this is such time, these are dire circumstances when there is no king, there's no heir, and there's nobody who is going to father these children. He says, no, I can't do it. Then she appeals to him that, look, you're your father's son. It is perfectly all right to marry them. Again, he refuses there. So then she remembered that a promise that was made to Satyavati's father, that after Shantanu, it is her son, who should be the heir to the throne. So she thinks immediately of her other son, which was born to sage Parashar when she was Matsagandha. You recall the story when Matsagandha was, yeah, she had a fishy odor, and she wanted that fishy odor to be dissipated or removed. And sage Parashar comes there and removes the fishy odor. At that time, she is enlightened, or rather, her fishy odor is removed, her ego is removed, and she is filled with Divya Gandha, divine Gandha, and she is called Satyavati. That time, a son was born to her, which the son had been taken away by sage Parashar and Satyavati was told that whenever you need him, you just think of him and he'll be there by your side. So this time, when she needed somebody to father to provide heir to Hastinapur, she thinks of her other son, that is the sage Vyas now. The moment she thinks of the sage, he's there immediately by her side and asks him, what am I supposed to do, mother? Now, after Bhishma's experience, she does not tell him, she does not suggest to him you marry or something. She just commands him to impregnate the two queens. Now, since it was a command by her mother, by his mother, he had to obey this. And she also told the two queens, first one, the Ambika, the older of the two, that you prepare yourself. The sage Vyas will be coming to your chamber. Sage Vyas went to her chamber, but she was horrified at her looks, and she closed her eyes. Sage Vyas did whatever had to be done, and after some time, when he came out, the Sativati, the queen mother, asked Vyas, "What happened?" He says, "When I went there, she just closed her eyes. That's all. And anyway, whatever I had to do, I did. But the child that will be born will be blind." Satyavati could not accept that kingdom should have a blind king. So she told her son, Sage Vyas, that you will have to go to the other queen, to her chamber also. So she told the younger one that Sage Vyas will be coming to your chamber. And when Sage Vyas went there, she was exceedingly terrified on seeing his looks. He had come from the forest where he was in an extremely unkempt state, and his looks were terrifying. So she was very frightened, and she turned pale. After some time, when the sage Vyas emerged from her chamber, Satyavati asked him, "What happened?" She says, Sage Vyas replied that she was terrified and she had turned pale. So the child who will be born will be very pale and of weak health. Now, Satyavati felt that such a child also would not be very suitable for as a king. So she says, "You'll have to go to this queen's chamber a second time." So a second time when he was about to enter, yeah, Ambalika, the younger of two queens in whose chamber he was to enter, she quickly went out and in her place substituted her maid. Well, Sage Vyas then did whatever had to be done to this maid. And when he came out, Satyavati asked him what happened. So he replied that instead of Ambalika, there was another maid there. Her maid was there. Anyways, the child that will be born to the maid, physically, he'll be perfectly all right. And in addition, he'll have extreme wisdom, way beyond what anybody, normal person, will have. So with that, this episode, that was all. That's how the uh, three or rather two queens and the maid became pregnant, and they were expecting the child. Now, this is a metaphor. The entire this his visit to the chambers of the two queens and the maid are metaphors. It is not that he sage goes there to impregnate them, to make them pregnant in the normal sense, because the sage he's transcended all sex. So the question of the, the sage wanting sex is not there. Even if it's a command, he is not going to do that. Like I told you earlier, in the case of Matsyagandha and sage Parashar, a sage is one who has zero ego in him, absolutely zero. There's no ego at all. He is 100% positivity. And because he is 100% positivity, he has got all the power, infinite power in everything. And they can do whatever they absolutely please. But the, the episode is that how not to behave when a sage or divinity is there in front of you. When the truth is staring at you, when divinity is staring at you, then how not to behave is what this episode is the metaphor here indicate. Now we have got four kinds of people. One, of course, is the kind of Bhishma is the kind of person whom he when the divinity is there in the form of his guru, This Bhishma, he was so egoistic that he even fought a duel with his guru, and although neither could be beaten, they were both of the same power and stature. Neither could be defeated. Nevertheless, it shows the kind of ego that he had. So Bhishma is one kind of person who, when he is cut off from God, he is absolutely uh, full of ego. The second, what happens is when is the Ambika's son. Ambika's son was born blind. Ambika, when a guru is there, you should never close your eyes. What is the meaning of closing your eyes? You deny. You want to not cooperate with the guru. Now, what does the guru do really to you? What the guru does is transforms you. He removes all your ego. Removal of your ego is not a pleasant thing. It's like gold. When you want to purify gold, you have to put that gold piece in the crucible, light a fire, and keep on and raise it to a high temperature till the gold melts. That melting of the gold, as far as the gold is concerned, it has to undergo a lot of I can't call it pain, but discomfort and agony, etc. If you ask the gold, how are you feeling? The gold is not going to tell you I'm feeling fine, because it's being molten. A lot of heat is being supplied, and the gold is being molten. And then the person who's purifying it will add some powder, etc., till the impurities come to the surface, and then it is skimmed off. So that the purification process, gold smelting, is really an uncomfortable process. The same thing happens within us. When the Guru takes charge of us, he tries to remove your ego. And this removal of ego is very, very, uh, the word may not be painful, but often it is described as painful. It is uncomfortable, or it is distressing. There is no exact word to tell you what is happening when you undergo that process of transformation where your ego is being removed. That and the guru does that. To, it has the power. In fact, in all these large gatherings, whether it was at Puttaparthi or now at Coimbatore with Sadhguru or with Sri Ravi Shankar, when people go to such saints, what do they go there for? They go there primarily to get their ego removed. That is the main purpose. And like Sadhguru has described him so many times, if you come to me, I'm going to thoroughly overhaul you. That overhaul is really only one thing, that is removing your ego. Once your ego is removed, once your zero negativity is there, then you become the pure Atma. You become the pure Purush, and you become God. That is what. Not that you become God. You are already God. You are God. Only thing is that it becomes very clear to you that you indeed are God. That is the metaphor. Then there's a third kind of person, third kind of category, who's very scared. Now, you should never be scared of the Guru. When it was this Ambalika, she was scared and she turned pale. When you turn pale, and you, so the Guru is not able to perform fully upon such a character, such a person. When the Guru is not able to perform completely, you remain sort of half baked. That is why you remain sort of half baked. You have to undergo further processing. That is what Satyavati had told Sri Parashar, that you'll have to go to her chamber a second time, because in the first process she became scared and she could not absorb all the treatment that he was meting out to her. In the first case, when Ambika's case, she just closed her eyes, but she was not scared. She closed her eyes. So and in the third case, that in the case was Maid, she was neither scared nor she closed her eyes. So the child that was born to all three of them were three different kinds. The first kind was the blind child who was named Dhritrashtra. The second one who was born who was pale and of very weak constitution, he was Pandu. And the third child of the maid who was normal in all physical features, mental features, but who was exceedingly wise. He had this additional qualification of being exceedingly wise. This uh, this uh, this is the third, or rather the fourth kind of person that is there. So this metaphor really tells you how not to act when the when a guru or divine person comes before you. We were very fortunate, to be with Sat Sai Baba, and a lot of people these days, because although he's no longer his human form, his presence and everything is there very much. As far as a lot of others are concerned, these days they go to uh, other realized beings, such as Sadguru or Mata Amritanandmai in Kerala, or Sri Ravi Shankar, or there may be so many others also. And coming back to the story, now the three children who were born, the Dhritrashtra, he was the eldest, but he was born blind. Now, as long as they were children, it did not matter because Bhishma was there to rule the kingdom. But Dhritarashtra, he always had a very great uh, sense of injustice done to him, and he felt that the injustice done to him is not right. He didn't deserve to it. He should have also been born with eyes so that he could become the king. Now, because he had closed his eyes, and because her mother had closed her eyes, so she could not distinguish. The child could not, who was born blind, could not distinguish between the truth and untruth, which is the good and bad. He really could not distinguish. That is the meaning of a blind king. Further, in order to overcome this deficiency, he developed his body. He made his, I mean, he took various measures to strengthen his body. So he became very strong. But he could not really differentiate between the good and the bad because he could not see. Pandu, on the other hand, he was a benign temperament, and uh, he could distinguish the right from the wrong. But he was very kind of sickly child. When the time came for the king to be selected, the queen mother, who by this time came to know that her the third of the half brother, Vidur, uh, was very wise. So she asked Vidur that it's time to select the king. Who do you think should be the king? Dhritarashtra, the eldest who is blind, or Pandu, who's very weak? Immediately, Vidur replied, no, no, the blind king, you cannot have a blind king. You have to have uh, a king. Pandu should be the king. So Satyavati thereupon asked Bhishma to crown Pandu the king. Now, when Pandu was crowned the king, Dhritarashtra was further alienated, and he felt very morose, sick, and he not sick. He felt very morose and angry with himself and everybody around, and he felt that a great injustice is being done to him. But there was nothing he could do, and life continued for some time. As luck as was the uh, custom those days, the king would go out hunting every other day or whenever the opportunity came. So one day, uh, King Pandu, he also went out hunting. And while he was hunting, he shot what he thought was a deer. And indeed, it was when he went to correct that deer, it was a deer indeed, but it was only the form of a deer. Actually, it was a sage who was who said that when he saw that it was really a sage, he felt very sorry and he said, I'm sorry, I've killed you, please forgive me. He said, look, I was engaged with my wife. Both of them had turned themselves into a deer so that they could uh, mate and, so to say, enjoy the pleasures of the world. When and then the Rishi told him that, look, you did not know my identity. So I will not curse you for being a Brahmin and curse you for killing a Brahmin. You are not aware of my identity. You thought they were only some deer. But the scriptures enjoin that no one should be killed or hurt when he is engaged in calm. You have done so. For that, I'll curse you that when you engage in calm at any time, you will also be, you will also die. That came as a big shock to this Pandu, and he turned back, and but there was nothing he could do. Meanwhile, sorry, I've jumped a little, come a little ahead. I forgot to tell you about the story how the two princes, the Dhritrashtra and Pandu, they come to wed. Now, when they became of age, it was time to get them wedded. Satyavati called Bhishma and said that it's time now to get them married. The king, both the brothers, they are old enough; they should be married off. So and please let it be known. So everywhere it was told that we are looking for a bride for the king of Hastinapur and his brother. The There was a kingdom called uh, not Khandapras. What's it called? Mm, Gandhar. The king of Gandhar. The king of Gandhar had a daughter by name Gandhari, and when he came to know that Satyavati was looking for a bride for her son, so immediately he proposed Gandhari's name and told his son uh, Shakuni to go to Hastinapur and give the proposal. So his son Shakuni came there and proposed and offered and told Bhishma and Satyavati that his father, the king of Gandhar, has sent a proposal for his daughter and Shakuni's sister, Gandhari, for the king. Satyavati now said that no, the elder brother is still not married. So we'll accept this proposal for Dhritrashtra and Pandu. This upset Shakuni very much because he wanted that his sister should be the king. Now his sister would only be the wife of the king's elder brother, who was also in addition blind. So he was very upset about it, but nothing could be done. Gandhari, when she learned about Gandhari, the daughter of king of Gandhar, was a very pious person. She was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. When she heard that what had happened was, she said, it's perfectly all right. If Shiva has willed that I should not marry the king of Hastinapur, rather I should marry the his blind brother, older brother, then so be it. I'm quite okay with that. And I will not bother about it. Now here there is this, sorry, I don't want to wait any, okay, we can do that later also. After Gandhari was married to Dhritarashtra, then it was time for Pandu. When Pandu's turn came, by that time, Satyavati learned that King Kunti Bhoj was arranging for the swamvar of his daughter Kunti. So Bhishma told Pandu that you go to the swamvar of Kunti and see how things turn out. So Pandu went to Kunti's swamvar, and there, the moment Kunti saw Pandu, she said, "Oh, this is my future, and for my mate, perfect mate." And immediately she placed the nuptial garland around his neck. So, and Kunti got married to Pandu. And they came back. Simultaneously, a little immediately thereafter, the uh, there was another king of Madra, who came to know about this Satyavati's wish for a bride for her daughter, the king of Hastinapur. So he sent a proposal with his son, Shalya, and told that he has a sister, Madri, and that king of his father had proposed Madri for as a bride for the king Pandu. When this was there, this was accepted by Satyavati, and that is how this that's how Pandu came to have two wives. One was Kunti, the other was Madiri. Now, they continued to live there for some time until this incident about that killing of the deer happened. When the killing of the deer happened, then this Pandu decided that look, if I can't engage in calm, there's no point in my living in the palace. I'd much rather go to the forest where I live like a ascetic and not be bothered about the kingdom at all. So my mind, I can devote myself completely to God. So with that, he moved to forest, where there he moved to the forest and they lived quite happily for until quite some time.